Next, you'll want to assess the risk posed by identifying threats and hazards. Once an initial set of threats and hazards has been identified, the planning team should select suitable assessment tools to evaluate the risk posed by the identified threats and hazards. The most successful assessments are conducted by a broad array of individuals, including support staff and first responders, students and parents, including students and parents with disabilities, and others with access and functional needs should be included to the maximum extent appropriate. These stakeholders bring a wealth of experience, historical data, and other information to the table when conducting assessments. Participants do not need to be involved in all aspects of the EOP development, only in those areas where they may have significant contributions to the process. Please note that there may be restrictions, either legal or practical, on utilization of information gathered by the planning team for customizing the emergency operations plan. For example, with information gathered by the behavioral threat assessment team, information may be restricted by both FERPA and or HIPAA laws. The assessment also has to be strategic. If the school is in an isolated region of a county and the response times for law enforcement officers or fire officials and EMS practitioners are lengthy, that may alter the assessment. If the response time is lengthy, other security measures may need to be enacted to compensate for those lengthy response times. It's common in Montana for response times to be between anywhere from 20 minutes and even up to a full hour. Assessments will be used, again, not only to develop the initial plan, but also to inform updates and revisions to the plan on an ongoing basis. There are numerous assessments that the planning team may use, including site assessments, culture and climate assessments, behavioral threat assessments, and capacity assessments. Assessments can provide schools with the data to support needed to help schools identify key issues in need of attention, assist schools in identifying threats to school safety, and pursue comprehensive approaches to improving school climate. These assessments will also help the planning team to customize the emergency operations plan. For example, as I spoke earlier about the Butte School District, site assessments may dictate which threats and hazards are specific to that particular school. I'll discuss each of these assessments in the next few slides. Site assessment. The site assessment includes, but is not limited to, a review of building access and exit control measures, visibility around the exterior of the building, structural integrity of the building, compliance with applicable architectural standards for individuals with disabilities and others with functional and access needs, and emergency vehicle access. This assessment also can include the testing of equipment, such as the interoperability of communication equipment. For example, do you have equipment to communicate with staff and students between buildings before, during, and after an emergency event? Randy Middlebrook, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Protective Security Advisor in Montana, can assist your school in the development of a site assessment for free. If you contact Mr. Middlebrook, he can set up an appointment with you to meet at your school. Culture and climate assessments. In schools with positive climates, students are more likely to feel connected to adults and their peers. This fosters a nurturing environment where students are more likely to succeed, feel safe, and report threats. For example, this assessment may reveal a high number of bullying incidents, indicating a need to implement an anti-bullying program. If a student survey is used to assess culture and climate, Student privacy must be protected. A range of school personnel can assist in the assessment of culture and school climate, including school counselors and mental health staff. Iris Ziegler is the School Climate and Transformation Grant Coordinator, and she can assist EOP teams in developing and implementing surveys for culture and climate assessment. Behavioral threat assessments. Behavioral threat assessments will provide guidance for the emergency operations planning team on how to respond to threats identified by the school's behavioral threat assessment team, or the TAT. What happens if the TAT identifies a student through their comprehensive assessment approach that might be a threat to the school? Who is notified? What actions are taken? How is this communicated to the school community to quell potential rumors or fears? Does your school have a threat assessment team? These assessments must be based on fact. They must comply with applicable privacy, civil rights, and other applicable laws, and are often conducted by multidisciplinary threat assessment teams. While an emergency operations planning team may include the creation of a threat assessment team in its plan, the threat assessment team is a separate entity and it meets on its own regular schedule. Note that while those working on an emergency operations plan team and those on a threat assessment team need to be connected, information, at least much of it, cannot be shared with the EOP team. Some of it is for legal reasons, and again, some of it is for practical reasons. For more information on developing threat assessment teams and guidance on developing a behavioral threat assessment for purposes of an emergency operations plan, please contact either the Readiness and Emergency Management for Schools website or contact the Colorado School Safety Resource Center. Colorado has become a top resource for schools across the nation in the development and guidance on up-to-date behavioral threat assessments. As a national leader in the development of behavioral threat assessments, they have presented at the Montana Behavioral Initiative, MBI, Summer Institute in Bozeman. And finally, the capacity assessment. The Emergency Operations Planning Team needs to know what resources will be available at their disposal before, during, or after an emergency event. These resources include the capabilities of students, staff, services, and material resources of community partners. You want to ask yourself, do we have the capacity to successfully implement our emergency operations plan in any given event? What skill sets do our staff already have? You may want to conduct an annual poll of all school staff to discover who has specialized training. This information can be used to assign the staff members with the most appropriate skills to specific response teams. Do they have CPR, first aid, first response training, EMT training? Do you have counseling services within the school, or do you need memorandums of understanding with mental health professionals outside of your school? Who has the training or skills to assist students with disabilities during an emergency? Equipment and supplies should also be inventoried. The inventory should include an evaluation of equipment and supplies uniquely for individuals with disabilities, such as evacuation chairs, the availability of sign language interpreters and technology used for effective communication if necessary, accessible transportation, and consumable medical supplies and durable medical equipment that may be used during a short or extended shelter-in-place or evacuation. With regard to equipment, there was an example of one school that had special chairs for students with disabilities to help in an evacuation event. However, what they discovered was that they had stored the chairs at one end of the school, but the students who were going to need access to those chairs in the event of an emergency were at the other end of the school. And so through a practice, they realized that they needed to make some changes in their plan. They had the capacity, but they didn't have it in an area that would help them during an event. You may want to ask yourself, what are the skill sets outside the school, and who might we partner with that may be able to assist us in the event of an emergency? For example, disaster and emergency services coordinators or DES coordinators, hospital personnel, mental health professionals, fire, local law enforcement, the Red Cross, the Forest Service, community leaders. Are there others in your community who may help? If there's a major event, for example, an earthquake, will the emergency medical services be available to the school, or will they be on other calls? Memorandums of understanding will increase the capacity of your school to respond in any given event, ensuring that a group will be available to your school. When thinking about capacity, think outside the box. In many parts of rural Montana, local ranchers have been exceptional resources in times of need. They may have equipment that can assist during an event. For an example, snowplows and trucks for delivering supplies.